Friends, it is that day once again. Now, many of you probably already filed your taxes, but if you're anything like me, heck no, today's the day. And that leads us to a rant about taxes. That's right, friends. We're going to talk about the income tax. We're going to talk about tax. We're going to talk about how we are getting ripped off and have been since 1917. Especially with the income tax. We're going to talk about the ins and outs. We're going to talk about why you have to file your own tax return, which is absolutely insane, and we're the only stinking country on the planet that does it that way. Thanks, H&R Block. We're looking at you. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. All right, friends, taxation is indeed theft. Now, I'm not making a legal argument. I'm not saying like it's against the law. It's in the Constitution, so some morons before us decided to actually approve the constitutional amendment allowing the federal government to have an income tax. Way to go. I mean, most of the amendments to the Constitution kind of moved us in the right direction, but a few kind of moved us in the wrong direction. Now, of course, we should have repealed that stupid amendment along with the prohibition against alcohol, which was also a dumb thing to put in there. Anyway, just a reminder, before 1917, almost all taxes collected by the federal government were gathered by tariffs. That's it. Tariffs. If you wanted imported goods, you had to pay a tax on it, which incentivized you to not do that, just buy local stuff, and you didn't have to pay any taxes. Now, there were a few instances in which they instituted an income tax, but usually they were only going after, they say they're only going after the 1%. Well, back then they really did kind of only go after the 1% with the income taxes during the Civil War and World War I. But in 1917, they were like, hey, this is cool. Why don't we make it so we can tax more people? The income tax. An abomination. Now, I'm not exactly sure when they came up with the idea that you and I have to calculate how much we owe the federal government, but that has been we've tried to get rid of that multiple times, but each time it's been blocked by, I know, I'm an accountant by trade, so I'm part of the guilty parties. H&R Block gives enough money to certain politicians that they can never make it so that the federal government prints you out a tax return. You ever wonder about that? If you go up to Canada, they print you out a tax return and mail it to you. You open up your envelope, you look at the tax return, and if you're like, heck, I don't want to deal with that, you look at the number down there, they've already withheld money. You either get a refund, you don't get a refund, you have to write a check and send it in. All you have to do is pay if you need to pay. And you're done. Not in the United States. In the United States, you need to go to the library and get your paper copies and fill it out, or you have to go pay somebody to fill out your taxes for you, or you have to pay a software so that you can be an accountant for a week or so. Great system where you have to pay money in order for you to be an accountant to pay your taxes. Super simple, right? So simple that people can get their PhDs in taxes. Fantastic. Fantastic system. So before 1917, we had no income tax. Not nationally. And before 1921, we had no sales tax. Not in any of the states. No sales tax in any of the states. No income tax. And yet, magically, we had schools. And our schools back then were actually better than schools today, which is kind of troubling. Steve, you're saying that the education rate in the United States back in the 1920s was better than the 2020s? Well, let's just look at the numbers, shall we? Illiteracy rate here in the United States today, 13%. Illiteracy rate in the United States in 1920, 6%. Are you saying that we have twice as many people who can't read today than we did back in 1920? The answer is absolutely yes. We compared better. We were actually more educated as a nation than the Europeans were. We had higher education than the Europeans. We had a higher literacy rate back then than we do today. We had a literacy rate. Now, illiteracy and literacy are two things, and there is kind of a middle in between them. Today, we have a literacy rate of 79%. Back in the 1920s, we had a literacy rate just over, a little over 70%. So we made a little bit of progress, maybe. But you go back and you see what kind of books they were reading back then. Reading newspapers back then. Yeah. Let's just say the garbage that's being put out there with young adults, fiction and stuff like that, reading is not what it used to be. You used to learn facts and information. When it comes to math, it's actually even worse. We've gone downhill significantly. Oh, well, that was because the students back then had more attention from teachers. No. Back then, average classroom had 30 students in it per teacher. 30 students per teacher back in 1920. Today, it's 17. We have twice as many teachers and twice the illiteracy rate. How about we just throw more money at it, right? That's what we're being told. It's just throw more money at it. Even though we have twice as many teachers and twice the illiteracy rate. That means teachers are 4 times less effective than they were back in 1920. And I hate to just keep hitting you with more, but back in the 1920s, the average American had 8 years of schooling. Average American today has 13.3 years of schooling. And the school years are longer now. Average school year back then was 143 days. Average school year today is 180 days. Twice as much schooling today with twice as much illiteracy, with twice as many teachers per student. Maybe we're doing things wrong. I don't know. Maybe they knew stuff back then. Maybe they were a little smarter. That was when the United States was going like this, up. We were booming. We were becoming the center of the world. Now we're becoming a cesspool. Europeans are afraid to go to America now. They flocked to America before in the 1920s. Oh man, New York City and Washington, D.C. and just California, all these places booming before the income tax. Somehow we made it work with just tariffs. Why can't we do that again? I mean, when you look at the federal government, one of the largest sources of revenue isn't the income tax. It's just borrowing money. The Treasury Secretary goes over to the Federal Reserve and says, make some more money. And the Federal Reserve says, okay, we'll make some more money and we'll buy up your loans. You write some loans up and we'll give you cash for those loans. And the United States basically just prints money in order to give money away for free to people stealing from the federal government, which apparently seems to be a significant portion of the federal budget is waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's not just a Republican talking point. That's been a Democratic talking point. Remember the Obama administration's attempt to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse and put Vice President Joe Biden in charge of that. The old Doge program. And presidents before that, Clinton and others, talked about cleaning out the federal government of waste, fraud, and abuse. But yet, we're still just starting to get there. Doge has cut $150 billion per year from stuff going forward. We got some big stuff that they're proposing that needs to be passed by Congress to make that enacted. But wow, income tax. Isn't that fun? So we talked about how the income taxes are having to be filed by you instead of, the government who has the information. The IRS is forbidden from just giving you a document saying all the 1099s, W-2 income, all the income that you have come in. They have that information. They could just send you the document and you could just either approve it, or if you want to challenge it, then you can fill out the form, show them some of the deductions that you had that they didn't take into account. You amend it and you send it back. And then the IRS isn't dealing with hundreds of millions of tax returns. It's only dealing with 10, 20, 30 million tax returns of people actually saying, no, that's wrong. This isn't right. That would be way easier on the IRS. It'd be way easier on all of us. But H&R Block would not make as much money. Jackson Hewitt wouldn't make as much money. These other tax preparation places wouldn't make as much money. When we talk about the tax preparation, let's just pull that up for you. Business. Tax preparation business economy. Anyway, I probably need to type something else in there for it. But we're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars. That is in addition to your taxes that you have to pay. You pay for that plus all your taxes. It's just a horrible, horrible system. It's one of the worst systems in the world. And yet we allow it to happen every single year. So, should we ignore it? Just hope it goes away? Should we just bite down and just take it? Well, friends, I'm going to at least rant about it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are feeling the same way. We had roads, we had schools, we managed to do all the things. We had an army, we had an air force, we had a navy. Well, we didn't technically have an air force, but it was part of the army still. But we had airplanes, we had warships, we had policemen on the streets. We had the I don't know if we had the FBI yet. We didn't have that corrupt institution just yet either. We didn't have the Federal Reserve. We managed to make things go, and we were becoming the center of the world. We were ascendant. We were rising, and it was exciting to be a part of America. The Roaring '20s were crushed by the IRS and the income tax, amongst other things. Friends, let us not forget how far we have fallen, what has been taken from us, because in the end, taxation is theft. We fought a revolution because we were taxed without our consent, without representation. I would argue that we have less representation today in Washington, D.C. than we did back then. We elected a president to go and to clean things up. And apparently he doesn't have the power to rein in the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats who have been imposing taxes on us, who have been conjuring up rules and regulations out of their own whims, cannot be reined in by an elected president, we're being told, or an elected Congress. Somehow they are beyond any of our power, which shows us once and for all that we truly are ruled by an oligarchy. Bernie Sanders is actually right on that one. A bunch of individuals in Washington, D.C., unelected individuals, rule us with an iron fist. Hey, if you criticize, if you go up against the IRS, if you go up against the FBI, you go up against the ATF, they will come, they will shoot your dog. You'll be lucky if they don't shoot you, because that in the end is what it's all about. If you don't comply, force and violence will be rained down upon you, because if you don't acquiesce to getting stolen from, theft being committed against you, they will use violence against you. And all this, apparently up to the state, without any representation. I didn't elect anyone to the IRS. I didn't elect anyone to the ATF. I didn't elect anyone to the FBI or any of these other organizations in Washington, D.C. that seem hell-bent on terrorizing all of us American citizens. All right, friends, that is my tax day rant. I wanted to get that out. We will get our Watchmen updates out this afternoon, but we need to kick off tax day with a tax day rant. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up there. If you want to check out our Bible study, we're going through the book of Nehemiah. Super relevant to today, as a lot of you guys are saying. You're like, wow, this is really talking a lot about what we're experiencing today as a nation. There's a link right there to the playlist. You can hop right in and join us for our Bible study. Whether you've studied the Bible before or not, it is an awesome group of people and a good study. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.